Record button. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. My name is Judy Bossy. I'm here with Functionize. And here at Functionize, we're all about helping testers really get to the next level. So I am so excited to be able to kick off and introduce this wonderful speaker series called Next Level Testing. Really, the goal for the speaker series is to help empower testers, build new skills, and really connect with a community of like-minded individuals. So I'm so pleased to introduce our first speaker, Vernon Richards of Abode of Quality. Thank you so much for being here, Vernon.
Greetings. Thank you, Judy. Welcome, everybody. It's nice for you to invite me along.
Great. Well, before I let you introduce the topic and really take it away, I just want to remind everyone that we are going to have a live Q&A at the very end. So please make sure to post your questions in the Q&A box. We'll make sure to have time once Vernon is done with his speaking slot. The session is being recorded, so you'll be able to reference the recording afterwards as well. And now on to you, Vernon.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you for joining us, everyone. So my name is Vernon, and I'm going to be talking, as the slide hopefully says, about career choices for the modern day tester. So in case you're wondering how I came up with this talk, it started in a Twitter space that I was in towards the beginning of this year, actually. And there was a question posed in that Twitter space. And this was the question. I've been a manual tester for 5 years, and I'm wondering what I can do next. So this talk is my answer. But before we get into that, there's a few things I'd like to just clarify before we get started. Okay, this is just my subjective opinion. I think I only have anecdata. There were no, triple blind studies performed before I delivered this talk. So bear that in mind. Also remember that I am, among other things, certain gender, certain age. I live in a particular culture and particular country. So maybe the advice or the things I've got to say may not land based on who you are and where you are. So apply some salt, a little pinch of salt to what I'm saying. I've been testing for a long time. I'm an old man. 20 years I've been testing as of this year. 20 years. So I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about the 3 perspectives that people can take during their careers. And I'm going to talk about what roles this can lead people to take. But then I want to talk about what's actually important, and hopefully that will be the main part of the talk. So I'm going to race through the roles and the perspectives and get to the really important stuff of the talk. Okay, so the 3 perspectives. So I think that there are 3 perspectives that people can take when they are testing. Because testing is concerned with answering the question, what could go wrong here? So in order to answer that question, you can take the perspective of the people involved with the application or the system. You can take the perspective of the technology, or you can take the perspective of the business. And those 3 different perspectives will help you figure out and answer that question about what could go wrong. So there will be a whole bunch of questions that may spring to mind as you adopt those different perspectives. So it could be, what problem are we trying to solve, for what people, who is building this solution, what technology are they using to build it, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the technology that we're using, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So I'm going to describe how I see these 3 different perspectives, and then we'll get into the main part of the talk. So the first perspective is the people, or as I like to say, dealing with the pesky humans. So the focus here is it could be on the team. So that could be the team in terms of the people who are building the application. or it could be the individuals that make up the team. So you could look at the team as a single unit, or you could just look at each individual within that team and focus on them individually. It could be from the perspective, obviously, of your customers. So who is using this application? What problem are they trying to solve with it? And are we solving that problem for them? Or you could be looking at this from the perspective of, I'm going to help the individuals on my team level up, or I'm going to help my teammates level up, and that kind of thing. So the impact that you're going to have here with a people perspective is generally to help people get unstuck. And that could be either at the team level or at the individual level. And it's in my opinion, it's a game-changing skill. This is generally where I tend to focus these days, is on the people. And so the kind of roles that you can have when you take up this perspective are test lead, head of quality, engineering manager, UX designer, product designer, and so on and so on. So that's the people perspective. And next we have the technology perspective. So what are we concerned about here? So with the technology, what we're concerned about typically are things like the obvious one, GUI automation, of course. And so we're not just talking about our old favorite tools. That's obvious. We could also be talking about things like automation in testing rather than test automation. So how can we use tools to leverage or amplify or increase our abilities to explore and understand the system? We could be looking at the testability of the system. So can we break up the system and test it in chunks, or do we have to test the entire monolith as one single big piece of the system? Can we control the state of the system? How easy is it to know that we have caused a problem, or that the problem has been found out in the wild? That kind of thing. So what we're focused on here, the impact that we're trying to have, is that we're trying to eliminate constraints that enable more effective testing. And it's a lot of fun. It's a very, very deep rabbit hole that you can go down, and it's pretty awesome. So the roles typically that appear with a technology focus are SDET, test architect, security tester, developer, and so on and so on and so on. So that's the technology perspective. The next perspective is the business perspective, or AKA dealing with that pesky capitalism. So the focus here is on figuring out who is our audience, or who are our audience, or customers, or stakeholders. And how do we measure success at the business level? And how do we incentivize our teams, for example? Or it could be, what's our North Star? Like, how do we even know that the thing that we're working on or building is solving a real problem for real people? And so the impact you can have here is that often there are processes and rewards that they're kind of at odds with each other. And so if one team succeeds, this team fails, or if this team succeeds, this team fails. So you're trying to find those things and get them out of the way, so everyone's aligned and pointed in the same direction. So the kind of roles that tend to have a business perspective: quality engineer, tester, a VP of X or a CXO, that kind of thing. So they are the three perspectives. We've got people, we've got technology, and we've got the business. Now, remember what I said. This is just my opinion, people. This is just anecdata. I don't have any facts here, I suppose. This is just my experience and my observations. Why is that important? It's important because, to be completely honest with you, all those roles that I said were people roles, you could just pick them up and drop them in technology. And the ones that I said were technology, you could pick those up and drop them in business. And the ones that I said were business, you could pick those up and drop those into people. In other words, the role title is probably not the important thing. It's what you're doing and what your perspective is. And even though I said that there were three, I'm not saying, I don't even think it's possible, but I'm not saying that you just focus on people like I tend to do and completely ignore technology and completely ignore the business. I don't think you can even do that. And even if you did, I don't think that's wise as a tester to ignore the people who are building the application or who you're building it for example, or to ignore the technology that you're using to build this thing. I don't think that is the important thing. Okay, I've got through the stuff that I don't think was super important. This is the stuff that I think is really important. And what is that? I hear you. I hear you cry out in Zoom land. And it's this. It's like, okay, that's all very well and good, Vernon, but how do I get this job or this role or this promotion? Remember, the original question was, I've been a manual tester for 5 years. What can I do next? So before we get into those actions, there are some things that I'd like to talk about. And forgive me, folks, there may be just a little bit, just a smidgen of woo-woo about to come into the talk, but bear with me, it's gonna make sense, it's gonna be good. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to say is you need to, there's a famous book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and that is what you need to do. You need to have a sense of, why am I even attempting to do this thing? Where do I see myself in 3 months, in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? Where is this motivation coming from? What is going to change for me if I achieve this goal? What is going to change for me if I get this role or if I achieve this promotion? That's the thing to think about. The obvious thing is money. Yes, you will get more money. But what's that money going to do for you? What's it going to enable you to do? What difference is that going to make for you or your family or your friends or whoever loved ones you want to think about? So that's the first thing I'd like you to bear in mind is, why are you even doing this? What's your motivation? The next thing I would like you to bear in mind is that you are going to need some self-belief. Your self-belief is probably going to be tested at least once in the effort of pursuing this role or pursuing this job or pursuing this promotion. That's important. It's also difficult to do. So if you don't have any self-belief, the next best thing you can have is a support team who will cheer you on and who will prop you up as you stumble, or pick you up if you actually fall down, and cheer you on as you're chasing down this path, trying to achieve the goal. In a really ideal world, you'll have both. You'll develop some self-belief, and you will have a cheerleading team, a support team who's going to help you and push you on to succeed as you pursue this goal. The next thing that I would urge you to bear in mind and to think about is, who is in control of your destiny? Is it a manager somewhere? Is it a recruiter or a hiring manager? Or is it in fact you? And I would say it's you. And the reason I say that is because nobody, not even the nicest person in the world. In fact, I have been a people manager before. And let's say, so let me take you back to last year. So last year I was leading a team, it's probably about 10 people. And one of the chaps in my team was really keen on getting a promotion. Cool guy, very capable individual. And we were talking, it was like saying, okay, now I know that you want to achieve this thing, awesome, let's do it. And then I got ill, and I got ill for a month. So I was out of the building for a month. And when I came back after a month, because I hadn't been there and because of the role that I had, it was like just meetings and this, that, and the other, and this, that, and the other. Getting pulled in lots of different directions. And that meant that I didn't catch up with this individual for another 2 weeks. And that's on me, not making excuses for me. That was not cool. But what it meant is there was 6 weeks before that conversation and then our next conversation. And in that time, he didn't do anything to move the situation forward. He kind of left it up to me to do. And with the best will in the world, when I was ill, I was worried about getting well. I wasn't thinking about anybody at work. I don't consider myself to be a mean person. He's a great person. And it's that kind of, that may be an extreme example, but that's why you need to take control of the situation. I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying it doesn't suck sometimes. But the facts are, no one's going to care about that, your career and your aspirations more than you. So you need to take control of that situation. We've all been there. We've all kind of felt, oh, well, I've been here for such a long amount of time and I've been doing this, that, and the other, and you're not getting the recognition you deserve. It's like, that is true. I have felt that and I've said that. But think, what can I do to get over, under, around, through this situation, this problem, to achieve the goal that I'm trying to achieve? So remember, you're in control. It's not down to your manager or hiring manager or anything like that. The next thing I would like to say is, if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you've been getting. Why is that important? You're probably, if you're trying to answer this question, you're thinking about your career and you're projecting things forward, you want to go from where you are now to somewhere else in the future. So in order to, generally speaking, in order for a change to occur, you generally have to change. And so that is deeply uncomfortable for most humans. It is for me, and there's a decent chance it will be for you as well. And it's better to know that going in. I'm going to have to change in some way, shape, or form in order to make my situation change. You're probably going to have to give something up. It may be for the short term, it could be for the long term. What do I mean by that? Maybe there's a new skill that you're going to have to learn, a new skill that you're going to have to acquire. And that's going to require a sacrifice of time. You may not be able to spend as much time with friends or families or loved ones, or doing things at the moment you're doing that bring you joy, or doing things that are important to you temporarily, if it gets you to where you're trying to get to in the future. So you've got to bear that in mind. There has to be some kind of change in order to affect within you, in order to affect the change that you're trying to make. That is linked to the next thing that I would like you to bear in mind, is that, and that is discipline and determination. This could take a certain amount of time to get to where you're trying to get to. It could take a certain amount of effort. And so what you don't want to do is, say, I would like to be, I've been a manual tester for 5 years. I've never used an automation tool of any kind, shape, or form, in my life. And I would like to be, I don't know, Angie Jones by next week. It's probably going to take a lot longer than that. And so it's going to take a lot of discipline to get from where you're at right now to where you want to be. And you've got to stick with it. That's why you've got to have that support team. That's why you've got to have that self-belief, and so on and so on. It's similar. The example that I like to use in my life is, I'm looking down. Sadly, I would really, I'm kind of hung up on my looks a little bit. It's not super healthy, I suppose, but I would really like a six-pack. And if you were to ask me on a scale of 1 to 10, hey, Vernon, how much do you want this six-pack? I would say 10. I would say I definitely want this six-pack. There's no question that I want this six-pack. However, when I am traveling, let's say, I get a bit peckish, I get a bit hungry, and I venture into the local establishment, wherever it is, a Sainsbury's if you're in the UK, or 7-Eleven if you're in the United States, or something like that. And I could get myself fruit, or I could get myself a nice healthy sandwich perhaps, or I could get myself, or a bottle of water, or I could get myself chips, crisps, sweets, a donut, I don't know. Something that's not going to achieve the goal. That's where the disciplining comes in. That's where I've got to stick to it. I've not chosen that, and therefore I don't have the result that I want. And that's what I'm speaking to here. You've got to be really clear-minded about why and stick to the mission and stick to the goal at hand. That leads into the next point, which is, because of this effort and this discipline, and because you're going to have to change, it's almost certainly going to take you outside of your comfort zone. The growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. Excuse me. The growth does not happen in the comfort zone. It happens outside of the comfort zone. Now, I'm not saying being in the comfort zone is bad. I am merely saying that if you would like to grow or change, that happens in response to challenge, and the challenge is outside of the comfort zone. This is the key. Now, you can spend too much time in that challenging zone, and eustress, which is the kind of stress that invigorates us and motivates us, can turn into de-stress, which is the kind of stress that saps us and takes us down. And if you stay there too long in de-stress, you can burn yourself out, and that is extremely dangerous. Please do not do that. So what I'm saying is, you got to be mindful and be intentional about where you are in this continuum, where you are in this comfort zone. If you are in a moment of your life where there's lots of things going on at home and there's lots of things going on at work, and you want to dial it back at work and chill out in that comfort zone and hang out there because it's comfortable, do that. Do that. However, if you're trying to achieve some goal, you're going to have to step out of the comfort zone for a period of time and use that challenge to affect the change that you're trying to affect. So, hope that makes sense. Now, finally, we're on to the actions. At last, Vernon, well done. Okay, so the next thing that you need to do is figure out which direction of all these different directions that I can go in, which one should I go into? Because you could go people, you could go technology, you could go business, and then within that, there are other things that you can do, and other things that you can do, and other things that you can do. How do you choose? Well, one thing that you can do is think about what are the kinds of questions that people say. They say, you know what, I've got this question, and the best person to answer this would be Judy, because Judy is an expert on X, Y, and Z. Or you could think to yourself, oh, people always come to me for questions about this. And that can be a clue of where you should, double down and maximize that skill that you already have, that talent that you already have, that know-how and that insight. Following on from that, another thing that you could do is think about what are topics or skill sets or themes that give you energy, that boost you up, that light you up. And then what are the topics that detract and drain and make you feel like, ugh, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's another clue. That's another tell. So for me, it's people. For me, it's coaching. For me, it's quality coaching. That's what gives me energy, and that's what boosts me up. So that's the kind of direction that I'm going down. Whereas, for somebody else, people would make them feel, I'm not really too keen on that kind of thing. It's all a bit too soft and squidgy. So there's no right or wrong answer. I can't tell you what is the right answer for you. Only you can do that, and it's going to take some reflection to figure that out. The next thing I'd like to think about is, who are you trying to serve? There's this wonderful quote that I love from, I think he's American chap called Zig Ziglar. Ridiculously cool name, Zig Ziglar. And Mr. Ziglar would say, how's this saying? It says, if you help enough people get what they want, you can have anything that you want. I love that saying. If you help enough people get what they want, you can have anything that you want. Now, you're probably wondering what that means. So I've got a couple of examples. If you're in this call, you've almost certainly heard of these two people. So first person I want to talk about is Angie Jones, and the second person I want to talk about is Rosie Sherry. So Angie Jones, one of the things we talked about was technology, that technology perspective. Many of us here realize that our competence with tools and technology can really aid our career in a myriad of different ways. However, the opportunity and the cost to learn that stuff can sometimes be a bit high. So what did Angie do? She leveraged her network and her persuasive skills and literally went all over the world, finding experts in different aspects of automation and technology. Convinced them to create some material that people could learn from, grab that material and put it on a website for people to access and use and learn from for free. Now, Angie is, I'm going to get this right, she is a VP, a global VP of developer relations at a ridiculously huge company that we've probably all heard of. If you help enough people get what they want, you can have anything that you want. She's crushing it. And then Rosie, I mean, I'm literally wearing the hat. Rosie Sherry of Ministry of Testing fame and the t-shirt. I was just saying to Jenna and Judy, and I've got the cup, I've got the world famous test sphere cup. Like I am, you know, I'm here for Ministry of Testing. Rosie, back in the day, realized that for where she was in her career and where she was in her life, just as a human, there wasn't a community or a way of working that fit for her and her family. So she created what was then called the Software Testing Club, and then evolved into the Ministry of Testing. And that is a community of hundreds, if not thousands, of testers and quality engineers and everything in between globally, who get together regularly to talk about testing, quality, development, skills, empowerment, mental health, all this kind of stuff. She's created a space where we can go and have those conversations. As a result, she's been wildly successful, and she's off doing other ventures now because she helped enough people get what they want. So now she can have anything that she wants. This is important for you because as you're striving for this job, this role or promotion, you need to think about who are the people that will be impacted by this role that I'm trying to achieve, or by this job that I'm trying to gain, or this promotion that I'm trying to secure. And you want to make their lives as easy as possible so that when this talk of who should we hire, who should we promote comes up, it's like, oh, we should definitely give it to, I don't know, Trevor, because Trevor's absolutely amazing. Trevor's incredible. What do you mean you haven't promoted Trevor already? It needs to be that level of conversation. Make it easy for people to say yes to what you're trying to achieve. The other thing that you could do, and seems to work quite well, is to realize that success leaves clues. Okay. Now, what that means is, if you're trying to walk down a path or achieve a goal, it's almost certain that somebody has walked that path ahead of you. So what you need to do is study what they have done, use them as mentors, use them as an example. You could use somebody like Angie Jones. You could use somebody like Rosie Sherry. You could use somebody like the wonderful Jenna Charlton, who's in the chat right now. Because when I first met Jenna was an incredible tester. Probably still is an incredible tester. But what is Jenna doing now? Well, they are a product manager. I hope I'm getting that right. So if you're trying to say to yourself, I would like to become a product manager. I've got a really, I'm focused on people, I'm focused on business. My skills as a tester give me that perspective. I think I got good ideas for product. How do I actually do that? There's somebody there that you can follow and look at their example and maybe even say, hey, could you hit me up with some advice or this, that, and the other? Now, when you're approaching these people, I am not talking about being an energy vampire, people. Don't be like, Jenna, you must tell me everything that you know about product management. You must tell me now. I know that you've got a life, but I'm more important than that. Like, don't be that person. Just be cool. Just be chill. Just be helpful. Just be friendly. Try and help Jenna get whatever it is that she wants or they want so that you can get what you want. That is the key. So yeah, the other thing to remember actually is I shouldn't say don't. Be mindful that the person that you are looking to emulate, sometimes you can emulate somebody or interact with somebody as a mentor who's so far down that track that you're trying to go down that maybe they have difficulty empathizing with where you're at right now. So sometimes it can be useful to find someone who is not that far away that they can't empathize with you anymore, because they're going to need to be able to give you advice or answer questions and that kind of thing. Hope that makes sense. I love that bit of advice. There are so many cool people around. If you're in this call, or if you're watching this call later, you're already in an environment where there are other people striving to get better or to improve. So if you just look around you, if you're in the chat, if you're in one of these communities, leverage it. Get on Twitter, join the conversation, look for like-minded people, and everyone is trying. You'll be surprised at how supportive people can generally be. The next thing to talk about is consistency over perfection, or in other words, progress beats perfection. We don't have to wait for everything to be perfect before you attempt to make a change. Progress beats perfection every single day of the week. For example, in the before times when I was commuting to the office, I live in a city called Leicester, which is kind of in the middle of England, in the Midlands, and I'm about 100 miles almost exactly due north of London, and I was working in London at the time. So that's like, depending on how you travel, that is, excuse me 1 second. My daughter wanted to come and give me a message. Yeah, so that's like a 1.5, 2 hour journey. And so I would spend the first half hour of that trip learning to code. I was learning Ruby. I love Ruby. I don't know why. I just enjoy Ruby. And I would just do that every day, Monday to Friday, month after month after month after month, to the point where I was able to apply for certain jobs that I had no confidence applying for in the past, because I would have called myself not technical. I'm trying to unlearn that description of myself. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. The small steps compound. And as you're focusing on taking these steps, you're just looking down, it's got to put one foot in front of the other. And then you look up, and suddenly you look behind you, you look across, and you're at the top of some mountain. There's some massive view. You didn't realize how much you've learned. You didn't realize how far you've gone. So don't worry about, I didn't say to myself, I need the perfect environment with the perfect machine. I'm going to I need a mentor, so I'm not going to get started until I've got someone. I just said, you know what, I'm going to start. I've got access to the materials. I'm on a train. It's going to be busy. It's going to be packed. I don't care. I really want to learn this thing. And I started, and I continued, and I made progress, and it compounded. And that's what I'm talking about. So whatever your goal is, starting is the most important thing. And then maintaining and being persistent and consistent is absolutely key. Compounding is absolutely incredible. Now, how do you stay consistent? Well, this model is the 6 sources of influence model from a very cool book called Influencer. It's by a group of authors. One of them is called Joseph Grenny. I think there's about 4 authors, maybe even 5, but the one I always remember is Joseph Grenny. And their model talks about these 6 sources of influence. So the first thing is you've got to make the undesirable desirable. So this links back to the start with why principle that we talked about before. It's like, well, okay, if you're trying to make a change in somebody, or if cause somebody else to change, and it applies to you as well, what's in it for me? Like, what do I get out of this? So the more you can make that real and understand, the better. Surpass your limits. Are people able to do the thing that they need to do? Are you able to do the thing that you're trying to do? Harness the peer pressure. That is about, are there people around you who are going to support the behavior that you are trying to embody and live? And are there people who are going to discourage the behavior that will take you away from your goals? Finding strength in numbers. That is around, well, are there a group of other people who are also moving in the same direction, who are also going to support you in what it is you're trying to do? Designing rewards and demanding accountability is about, do we reward the behavior that we want, and do we discourage the behavior that we don't want? And changing the environment. It's like, how, if I go back to my six-pack example, I'm at my desk. If I have sugary treats and salty treats within arm's reach, that's not going to help me achieve my health and fitness goals. So maybe instead of that, I should have bottles of water. I should change my environment to have fruit. I should change my environment to have nuts or something like that. Another way of looking at this is to look at it from in the same way that James Clear does. James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, another book that I would highly recommend. Very, very cool. So what James talks about in his book are these laws that enable you to build a good habit. So the first law is make it obvious. Second law is make it attractive. Third law is make it easy. Fourth law is make it satisfying. And you can see the overlap with the influencer model. And the thing is, these laws operate at three different levels. So the first level is outcomes. So what do you get? The second level is processes. What do you do? And the third level is identity. Yes, identity. What do you believe? The interesting thing here is, if you focus on the third level, what do you believe? That is the most important thing. So in other words, if you focus on who you want to become rather than the goal, that will have the most impact. So you could say to yourself, I'm a manual tester now. I would like to be an amazing, I don't know, engineering manager. What would an engineering manager do in the position that I am right now? Or what would a senior tester do if they were in my position right now? Or what would a quality coach if they were in my position? Or what would an estet do if they were in my position right now? And then embody that person, and then take the action that that person you're trying to become would take. So focus on that instead of the goal, and you'll see results much faster. And I do believe, yes, that is it. So quick recap. I've been a manual tester for 5 years. What can I do next? So you could go down 3 different tracks, go down a people track, technology track, business track. There are so many roles and opportunities available to us. That is not even the start of the, I mean, that's not the problem. That part is covered. We've got so many options. The things that are going to make the difference for you are these. You've got to get clear on your why. You've got to understand what is the whole point and purpose of you doing this thing in the first place. You got to remember and recognize it's going to be hard. Get yourself a support team. Always develop your self-belief. It's going to take you out of your comfort zone. Expect that and prepare for it, but don't linger there. Otherwise, you could risk burnout. Think about who you want to serve. And if you help enough people get what they want, you will get what you want. Imagine who you're trying to become and embody the behavior of that person before you've become it, if you like. And please remember that progress beats perfection every single time. Compounding of small actions is the key. And that is the end of the book.
Thanks so much, Vernon. I just want to pause here and give everyone a chance to post questions in the Q&A box. We've got a few more minutes of Vernon's precious time today. I want to make sure your questions are answered. We'll start with this one question here. Vernon, are there ways to be technical that don't include coding?
Great question. Absolutely, yes. There are two articles that spring to mind that probably describe this better than I could. One is by Dr. Jess Ingrassalino, and I think another one is by Alan Page. They spring to mind. We'll have to try and get you the links. But absolutely, yes. You could be thinking about databases. A friend of mine, Lee Marshall, who is the pirate tester on Twitter, he talks about this all the time. So you could be proficient at SQL, you could be proficient with pipelines and infrastructure, you could be proficient with logging, you could be proficient with monitoring and observability tools, learning how to navigate your way around version control systems like Git, extremely powerful, Bash. All of these things, APIs, I mean, all of these things are definitely technical, but not all of them are coding. Some of them kind of start to blur the line a little bit, but yeah, you don't need to focus on learning how to code. It's a powerful thing to learn. I'm not trying to discourage you, but if you don't have the energy for it, like I said before, there's plenty of ways you can be technical without learning a programming language. So yeah, great question.
Awesome, thanks. And I know you mentioned a couple resources during your talk, but what are some of your favorite resources to share for growing your testing knowledge?
So, obviously I'm literally sat here in all the paraphernalia. So please head to ministryoftesting.com for all of your upskilling testing needs. But for me, I'm going down the coaching space quite a lot, because I find that that's the thing that, I don't know, I think sometimes it gets forgotten quite a bit. It's become much more to the fore than it was when I started. And coaching is a skill set for me that makes all the other things work, because this always comes back down to people either working together to achieve a goal for other people, and how they communicate, how they work, how they interact is absolutely massive. And so coaching, I mean, people say, yeah, Scott, soft skills are important, but coaching gives me a way, at least, I believe, to make that real and practical. So I would read a book called, Crucial Conversations by Joseph Grenny again. Absolutely fantastic book. If you want to learn more about coaching, I'd read the Coach's Case book by Kim Morgan and Jeffrey Watt, I think, and Coaching for Performance by Sir John Whitmore. They're my go-tos. You've got Test Automation University for the technical related stuff. They've got a breadth of tool resources that you can learn there. And obviously, like I said, my good friends, Ministry of Testing, please do head over there and see what they've got to offer.
Awesome. Thanks, Vernon. Here's another question. I know you mentioned mentorship. How important is it to find a mentor/sponsor in career growth? And what is the best way? Like, what sort of advice do you have for finding a mentor?
Great question. So my understanding is that mentors and sponsors are not the same. So I'll just touch on that briefly. A mentor has experienced the thing that you're trying to achieve and can guide you on how to achieve it. Whereas a sponsor can just make things happen for you, even almost like magic. So it's the difference between, you're trying to get through this door over here. A mentor could say, okay, you need this lock pick, and this is the technique that you need to use. And then you go to the lock and do this. Whereas a sponsor just gets a bazooka out and just blows the door apart. There's no more door anymore, and you just walk through. So they're both two different things, and they are both massively useful. How do you find these folks? It basically comes down to networking. So like I said, if you are listening to this either live or in the recording, you are resourceful enough to find out where the rest of the people are that are listening to this are hanging out. It's going to be online for sure. There's going to be spaces that we can find online, LinkedIn, Slack channels of various different description. Twitter's a good one, although it can get a bit weird in Twitter. Reddit might be another one. But then also, if you're in the industry already, in your team or in your company, there will be people there who will be more experienced than you, who might be able to sponsor you or mentor you. But as I said before, it's not about just running up to people and say, can you be a mentor? Can you be a mentor? Can you be a mentor? It's not that. It's about just, you're building a relationship with these folks, and you're trying to demonstrate that, hey, I'm here to help. I think you're awesome. I think you're incredible. And it's more of a, it can be much more of a softly approach. It's not just, ask all the time. I don't think that would be very successful. That tends to work quite well for mentors. For sponsors, I think it's networking again. I am not an expert in finding sponsors. I have benefited from sponsors in the past, but it feels like I found them accidentally almost. But again, it was because I was just out meeting people and just networking and trying to be helpful and friendly and that kind of thing. And over the course of time, people are like, oh, I can help you with this, and they just eliminate problems before I even knew they were there. So I hope that helped, but there's almost certainly some good resources online that we could maybe dig out for you and share, and that could help with that.
Definitely. And I've heard also too that whether working with a mentor or sponsor, it's important for you to take ownership in the relationship and be very specific about what you're looking for, whether it's a promotion and help getting there or advice on very specific skill sets. The more specific and proactive you can be, the more success you'll have. That's
a great point. If you imagine, I'm just going to pick on Jenna because they're here. So imagine you're going to run up on Jenna and say, hey, I need some help to become a product manager. And they're like, cool, what do you want to know? And you're like, everything. That's not like that. That's no good. Like, people are busy. And also it will sound like you've done absolutely no legwork. I'm assuming that many of us are testers, and it's the difference between doing this. It's the difference between reporting a bug and saying, developer, this doesn't work. Or you could say, developer, this is not working. So when I do this, this is what happens. And I went and looked at this thing, it doesn't work there. And I tried this, it still didn't work. And now I'm wondering if so I went and spoke to this person, and I'm like, what do I do? Who is most likely to get any time? It's this person, because they've tried a ton of things and they're able to articulate it. So be that person when it comes to mentoring and sponsoring. That's a great point. Sorry, I talked too much.
No, that was great. That was great, Vernon. Next question. You talked about getting out of the comfort zone in order to really go into the growth zone. I'm curious, what has been the biggest leap in your testing career in terms of requiring the biggest jump from your side as far as getting out of your comfort zone goes, whether it was, the scariest leap or the biggest leap in terms of skill set?
Yeah, there have been a couple. Well, these ones that spring to mind immediately. The first one was I started my career in video games, believe it or not. So I was testing video games. Anyone who's tested video games, or if you imagine, or at least when I did it, if you imagine the typical teenager playing video games in their basement or in their bedroom, that's basically the job as it was when I did it back in the early 2000s. So to go from that, and then I ended up, after doing that, going and working at a software testing consultancy for really huge companies that were famous in the UK and sometimes globally. That was scary, because I was like, I was literally testing a PS2 game like last week, and now I'm testing this amazing telecommunications network. What the hell is going on here? So that was hard. And then the other one was when I was asked to lead a team. I'm based in the UK. They were based in Germany. I don't speak German. The team was absolute, like, from the interview process meant that I met the team during the interview process, and they were incredible. They didn't necessarily need me in terms of, they were capable of doing the job. And so that was daunting. So I was like, why do you even need me? You're all awesome. Like, I just want to work with you because you're incredible. So that was those two things spring to mind as quite big leaps for me.
It sounds like the coolest job, playing video games.
It does, but at least then, I need to go back and check, but back then it was tough. It was fun. Ultimately, it was fun. I was playing PlayStation 2 games for a living. I mean, crying out loud. But yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so here's the last question before we close our segment. So last question is, what is the best way to develop a career growth plan for testers?
Mm-hmm. I kind of, you could say that was the talk. So you got to think about, what do I want to achieve in it? Like what is it that energizes me? Where do I get my energy from? And what do I enjoy? And what saps my energy and drains my energy? Or it might be, for me, and this is how it happened for me, or it's like, what is it that you're just naturally good at and people seem to gravitate towards you? So for me, so like, quick story, in that consultancy that I just mentioned, it was the first job I had was a pretty famous media company, at least in the UK, maybe over Europe. And so I was in a team that sold set-top boxes and TV packages to the public. So quite high profile as far as the business is concerned, because we made a lot of money. But there were other teams on which the ability to sell stuff, we depended on that. So before too long, like, if something didn't work on our side of the business, you invariably had to go and talk to somebody. And I very quickly was nominated as the person, if we need something from another team, we'll send Vernon. Because it's like, hey, Vern, I'd show up at this team, it's like, hey, Vern, how's it going? What's happening? I haven't seen you for a long time, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, yeah, cool. Oh, by the way, this thing is broken. Like, we can't figure it out. Can you help? And it was like, yeah, sure. If we had a data team that all the other teams had to go, we all had to go into a queuing system to request data. And if for some reason we needed, I always feel guilty sharing this. If we needed data from this team, I could skip the queue. I could just go and say, hey, because my friend was running the team, I was like, hey man, look, we need some data. Come in. He's like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And then produce all this data for us. So it's that. Figure out what your superpower is. And then do all the other steps that I talked about. Like, is there anyone that can advise you? So get out into the community, whether that's in your company, in a network, in a meetup, get advice from people, find a mentor, read books, read blogs, get on Twitter, and see how people who are doing your role operate and what do they talk about, what are they reading, what are they doing, and emulate that behavior. And then start doing it. And you can set yourself goals. You can use like a 30, 60 or 90-day plan, for example. You can say, well, in 30 days, I would like, where do you want to be in 30 days? And then you start there and then you work backwards. Say, well, if I need to be there in 30 days, it means I need to be here in 15 days, which means I need to be here in 5 days, and then create the plan. I have a coach called Ryan Cox who helps me with that a lot. So yeah, that's how I do it.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of coaching, Vernon, what is the best way for the audience to engage with you if they want to reach out?
Oh, you can hit me up on Twitter. So my Twitter name is Tester from LEIC. That's all one word. Tester from LEIC. LEIC is short for Leicester. And I was trying to get my rhyme on, so it should be Tester from Leicester, but goddamn character limits on Twitter. Damn you, Twitter. I have a website called vernonrichards.com. You can hit me up there, and I'm on LinkedIn, Vernon Richards.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vernon. A couple announcements from our side. At Functionize, we're all about upskilling and building up testing skills. So for anyone who's interested, we have an awesome certification program to help testers learn how to test with AI. You can find that on our website, functionize.com. And please join us for the next speaker, which will be Lisa Crispin, who is one of the foremost speakers on agile testing. I know her book, Agile Testing, has been on my bookshelf among great testing resources. So please check us out, September 22nd. And Vernon, I want to thank you so much for being the first speaker for our series. I absolutely enjoyed your talk and think that you provided some really great advice for testers in our community. So thanks again. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. And make sure you sign up for Lisa's talk because she's incredible.
Well, that's great. Thanks, everyone. You can catch the recording for this segment on our website and hope to see you all again soon. Thanks and have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Vernon.
Bye-bye.